Hello students, this is Kanika. Welcome to my channel PrepBiology. So today in this lecture we are going to discuss about parturition and lactation processes. So let's start with the lecture. If we talk about the parturition is basically a delivery of the fetus. Okay, so after the 9 months of pregnancy, when the fetus is fully developed, then after the 9 months, the delivery of the fetus or the childbirth takes place from the birth canal. That process is called the parturition. So, if we see that the vigorous contraction of the uterus at the end of the pregnancy causes expulsion, delivery of the fetus. Okay, this process of the delivery of the fetus is called the parturition. So, if in the fetus, when the fetus is fully developed, then the contraction begins in the uterus of the female body, and contraction leads to the delivery of the fetus from the birth canal. So that process is called the parturition. Okay. If we see in the parturition process is induced by different neuroendocrine system. Okay, so it induced by different neuroendocrine systems. These neuroendocrine systems will originate from the fully developed fetus and the placenta. Okay, so when the fetus is fully developed, and that fully developed fetus and the placenta, they induce uterine contractions. And those contractions are called the fetal ejection reflex. Okay, so the parturition induced by the different neuroendocrine systems, those are originated from fully developed fetus and the placenta, that cause the uterine contraction. So the contractions of the uterus takes place. That process is called the fetal ejection reflex. This is very, very important. That is called the fetal ejection reflex. So what happens when the fetal ejection reflex takes place? It trigger the human or the female brain. Okay, so if we see this picture, the brain, and below the brain we have the hypothalamus region. Okay, at the hypothalamus region we have the pituitary glands present. Okay, so we have the pituitary glands present in the hypothalamus region of the brain. So what happens when the fetal ejection reflex takes place? It trigger the maternal pituitary. Okay, so it will trigger the maternal pituitary gland. Basically, it will trigger the posterior pituitary of the mother, that will release the oxytocin. This hormone is very, very important for the parturition process. Okay, so under the fetal ejection reflex, it will trigger the maternal pituitary, and that will release from the maternal pituitary, the oxytocin will release, and that leads the strong uterine contraction. So that leads the strong uterine contractions. Okay, so this stimulatory reflex between the uterine contraction and oxytocin secretion takes place, that further release stronger and stronger uterine contractions that lead to the expulsion of a baby out of the birth canal. So when the uterine contractions continuously takes place in the uterus of the mother, that leads to the expulsion of a baby. Okay, from the birth canal it will expel out, and the delivery of the baby takes place. Okay, so you can see the hypothalamus is the part of the brain. In the fetal ejection reflex, what happens? It will trigger to the hypothalamus, and in the hypothalamus basically it will trigger the maternal pituitary, that is the posterior pituitary, that release the oxytocin, that will leads to the stronger contractions of the uterus that leads to the delivery of a baby from the birth canal. Okay, from the birth canal the parturition takes place. Okay, so this fetal ejection reflex is very important for the parturition process. I hope by this flow diagram the parturition process is clear to you all. The main hormone that leads the parturition, that is the oxytocin hormone, which is released from the maternal pituitary gland, basically posterior pituitary, okay, which is present in the brain of the mother. Okay, so this is important. Now the next process, after the delivery of a baby, after the process of parturition, the lactation process happens. What is lactation? Lactation is the mammary gland of the female undergoes the differentiation during the pregnancy and starts producing milk towards the end of the pregnancy by the process of lactation. So what happens after the pregnancy? After the completion of the pregnancy, after the childbirth, the mammary glands of the females, mammary gland, basically the breast, from the breasts of the female, they will start producing the milk. Okay, so that process is called the lactation. Okay, so what happens is we have studied in the previous lectures the breast. In the breast there is very important part, that is the alveoli. Okay, so in the alveoli part of the breast, we know that the milk secretion and the storage of milk takes place. So what happens is after the parturition process, the mammary glands starts producing or starts secreting milk. Okay, so that process is called the lactation. Very important one point is here, the milk produced during the initial few days of the lactation. The milk which is produced during initial few days of the lactation, that is called the colostrum. That is very important. In the initial few days, the milk is produced, that milk is called the colostrum, which is very important for a baby. Why? Because it contains multiple antibodies. Okay, so it will take multiple antibodies, and which are important for the baby immune system. Okay, so what happens is now what are the hormones which helps in the lactation? So there are two hormones. First is the oxytocin. As we all know, this is the hormone which is secreted by the hypothalamus, which is present in the maternal pituitary gland. And the second very important hormone for the lactation process, that is the prolactin. Prolactin and the oxytocin are released from the mother's pituitary hormone. Okay, so these two are produced from the mother's pituitary hormone, and prolactin will help in the milk production in the mammary gland. Okay, so in the alveoli of the breast of the mother, the the secretion of the prolactin is very important for the milk production. And what is the function of oxytocin? Oxytocin helps in the milk ejection process. Okay, so these two hormones are very important for the lactation process. I hope the parturition and the lactation process is clear to you all. The role of hormones, different hormones in different processes, are also very important. So this is all about today's lecture. So if you like this lecture, like, share and subscribe my channel, that is PrepBiology. Keep studying, study hard, study smart. Thank you so much.